Hi everyone, my name is Teresa Martin, and my project is titled Mapping Conspiracy Theories on Social Media, Truth, Misinformation, and Engagement. To understand this project, it is important to first think about what conspiracy theories do socially. Conspiracy theories are not just random or unusual ideas. They often function as sense-making narratives, especially during moments of uncertainty, fear, or crisis. When people feel like the world is confusing or threatening, they often try to find patterns that explain what is happening. That is why conspiracy theories can feel persuasive. They offer a story with a villain, hidden motives, and secret explanations. In my project, I look at conspiratorial rhetoric as language that frames events as being secretly controlled by powerful elites, institutions, or hidden forces. These narrative features may increase engagement by making posts feel urgent, revealing, or morally important. The main objective of my project is to help people become more aware of conspiratorial language on social media and to provide a framework for understanding the spread of mass rumors and conspiracy theories on social media. On this slide, I included examples of conspiracy-related posts from X. These examples show some of the language patterns I was interested in studying. For example, some posts use urgent phrases, emotional wording, or language that suggests hidden knowledge. Phrases like wake up, they were right, again, or arrest now are meant to create a sense of alarm or urgency. These examples also show why studying conspiracy content can be kind of complicated. The posts are not always just presenting information. They're often trying to persuade the audience emotionally. This is why my project focuses on measurable features of posts, including emotional language and word count. My two research questions are the following. Are political conspiracy posts on X with high emotional language associated with higher engagement levels than posts with low emotional language? And also, to what extent is the tweet word count associated with engagement levels on X? For my methodology, I conducted a quantitative content analysis of more than 25,000 political conspiracy posts collected from X. The data was collected using API-based keyword and key phrase sampling. Each post was then coded for measurable features. This includes total word count and emotional word count frequency. Engagement was measured using likes, replies, comments, reposts, or shares, and quotes. This slide shows the scale of the data set. In total, I collected over 100,000 tweets. After data cleaning, however, the dataset shrunk to about 25,000 posts. The spreadsheet screenshot shows what the data looks like after it's organized. Each row represented one post, and each column represents a variable. For example, the dataset included the post date, tweet URL, text, like count, post count, and other engagement metrics. This step was important because raw social media data is often very messy. Some posts may be duplicates, irrelevant, missing information, or not usable for analysis. Cleaning the dataset helped make sure that the final data was more consistent and appropriate for testing my research questions. This slide shows part of the technical process behind the project. I used the X API because it allowed me to collect posts in a more structured and consistent format. Instead of manually collecting screenshots or individual examples, the API returned data directly from the platform in a way that could be organized into a spreadsheet. The code shown on the slide includes the search function and query structure. For example, the API requests included search terms, time ranges, maximum results, and fields such as post time or post text, date created, and engagement metrics. This also made the project more reproducible. Another researcher could theoretically use similar search terms and coding procedures to collect comparable data. The coding scheme focused on variables like word count, emotional language, and engagement. Study 1 focuses on the relationship between word count and engagement. The main idea behind the study was to examine whether longer or shorter posts tend to receive different levels of engagement. For study 1, each X post was treated as a single unit of analysis. The post text was cleaned and organized before calculating the total word count. Word count was measured by counting a total number of words in each post. I also grouped posts into categories such as short, medium, length, and long posts to help demonstrate broad patterns in data. But the main statistical test used was regression analysis, which allowed me to examine whether word count predicted engagement levels. So basically, the study asked whether the number of words in the post was associated with higher or lower engagement. For the data analysis, I used a simple linear regression. In this equation, predicted engagement is the outcome variable, and the word count is the predictor variable. The coefficient for word count was positive, meaning that longer posts were associated with slightly higher predicted engagement. In simple terms, as word count increased, predicted engagement also increased slightly. The relationship was statistically significant, with a p-value very small, which is far below the standard of 0.5. However, the R value was also very small, which means that word count only explained about 1.18% of the variation in engagement. The main finding from study 1 is that longer posts predicted engagement, but the effect was very small. This is an important distinction. The result was statistically significant, but because the data set was so large, even small relationships can become statistically significant. The bigger takeaway is word count only may matter a little, but is not enough to um, explain engagement patterns on its own. This graph shows another way of looking at word count findings. The graph compares viral probability across long, medium, and short posts. Based on this chart, long post had the highest viral probability compared to medium and short posts. This supports the regression finding that longer posts were associated with higher engagement. However, it is still important to interpret this carefully. This graph shows a pattern, but it does not mean that length alone causes a post to go viral. Study 2 focuses on emotional language and engagement. For study 2, each post was coded for emotional language intensity. This coding was based on the presence of high emotion words and categories, including fear, anger, urgency, threat, moral language, or distrust-based language. Emotional language was treated as the predictor variable, while engagement levels were treated as the outcome variable. Engagement was measured using numeric metrics such as likes and repost. For study 2, I also used a simple linear regression model. In this equation, predicted engagement is the outcome variable, and emotional language is the predictor variable. The positive coefficient means that posts with more emotional language were associated with higher predicted engagement. The relationship was statistically significant with a very small p-value. However, the R value was also very small, meaning emotional language only explained about 0.19% of the variation in engagement. So, like study 1, this result suggests that emotional language is connected to engagement, but does not explain engagement patterns by itself. The main findings from study 2 is that emotional posts had higher engagement, but again, the effect was very small. This graph breaks down engagement differences across specific emotional features: anger, fear, moral language, and urgency. The most notable result is that urgency had the highest engagement compared to any other emotional categories. This is really interesting because urgency may be especially effective in conspiracy content. Urgent language can make a post feel very immediate, like the audience needs to pay attention or act right now. Overall, these findings suggest that political conspiracy posts with higher emotional intensity were associated with higher engagement, but emotion alone only explained a small proportion of engagement patterns. The same was true for word count. Longer posts were associated with higher engagement, but the effect was small. Together, these results suggest that engagement with conspiracy content is not driven by one factor. It is likely shaped by a combination of factors. For the next stage of this research, I am continuing to examine additional factors that may have a stronger influence on engagement than word count or emotional language. These include the specific conspiracy topic, the presence of moral claims, and the use of threat-based language. For acknowledgements, I would like to thank the UCLA Data Center for supporting the technical side of this project, included data scraping, data cleaning, and preliminary code resources. I would also like to thank UCLA for providing the funding support for access to the X API. And I would also like to thank Dr. Steve Peterson for his mentorship, guidance, and feedback throughout the research project. Thank you so much.